They thought you were finished, that the silence meant surrender, that your absence meant defeat. But what they never saw, what they never even imagined, was the storm that was forming behind your stillness. You weren't hiding. You were gathering. You weren't broken. You were becoming. And now the world is seconds away from learning a truth it never expected. You were never the victim. You were the prophecy. They say time heals all wounds, but they never mention the silence. The kind that seeps into your bones after every betrayal. The kind that lingers long after everyone else has walked away. You didn't survive by luck. You didn't make it through by chance. You were forged in a furnace of trials no one saw, in battles no one recorded, in a darkness so thick even your own shadow fled. You, chosen one, are not just the product of pain. You are the evidence, raw, holy, and undeniable, that divine justice never forgets. There were nights you sat in your room, breathing through tears, wondering if heaven had gone quiet. You whispered prayers, not because you were certain they would be answered, but because silence was the only friend who didn't abandon you. People called you strong, but they never knew the cost. The friendships that rotted from the inside, the betrayals that hit you with a smile, the rooms where you laughed with people who were secretly sharpening knives behind their backs. But you stayed. You stayed when the easy way out whispered your name. You stayed when walking away would have hurt less than staying still. You stayed not because you were weak, but because something deep within you, deeper than fear, louder than doubt, refused to die. There was something holy in your refusal to surrender. The world saw your survival, but they missed the secret. You weren't clinging to life. You were cultivating resurrection. You were walking proof that faith doesn't mean you always feel strong. Sometimes it means you keep breathing when every breath tastes like fire. And now they'll see. Not because you're out to prove anything. Not because you need validation, but because divine justice has a memory longer than time. The universe, God, the sacred balance, whatever name you give it, keeps the receipts. Every tear you cried in private, documented. Every time you chose peace instead of revenge, multiplied. Every night you laid your head down in pain and still woke up with grace, compounded interest. You, my dear, are the living balance sheet of heaven's justice. They underestimated you because they only saw the pain. They didn't see the purpose hidden inside it. They didn't see the weight of glory stitched into every scar. And that's okay. Because the justice coming for you isn't petty. It's not loud. It doesn't shout, "I told you so." It rises like dawn, like tides that swallow castles made of sand, like thunder after years of drought. And when it comes, it will not explain itself. It doesn't owe anyone clarity. It doesn't need applause. It moves like prophecy, quiet, unstoppable, and right on time. You are walking into rooms you once cried outside of. You are stepping onto stages you once dreamed of in secret. You are shaking hands with people who never imagined you'd rise from what tried to bury you. But the best part? This rise isn't fueled by ego. It's not about revenge. It's not even about being seen. It's about fulfilling a contract written in eternity, a covenant that said, when they rise, it won't be for applause. It will be for alignment. So yes, you're still healing. Yes, there are days you wake up and wonder if you're still too broken. But look around. You're still here. After the heartbreak, the loss, the gaslighting, the spiritual warfare, you're still standing. That's not survival, that's testimony. You are proof that God restores. You are evidence that heaven doesn't waste pain. You are the chapter that begins after the book was supposed to end. And now the ones who whispered about your fall will have no choice but to witness your rise. Not because you scream, not because you clap back, but because your presence carries a frequency that demands reverence. You don't need to argue anymore. You don't need to explain why you disappeared for a season. You don't owe anyone your scars, your story, or your silence. You have become what they never expected, a walking answer, a living verdict, Proof that grace is real, that light always wins. And the beautiful twist? You still love, you still hope, you still speak peace in a world built on noise. Because the real miracle wasn't just that you survived, it's that you remained kind, that even after everything, you never let the storm harden you into someone you were never meant to be. You didn't become bitter, you became better, not because of what they did but in spite of it. And now divine justice is setting the stage, not to humiliate them, but to elevate you. Because when heaven repays, it's never just restoration, it's multiplication. You're about to harvest from fields you didn't plant. You're about to drink from wells you didn't dig. You're about to walk through doors that were never supposed to open, not because you forced them, but because you were faithful, you were steady. You stayed when it didn't make sense, you served when no one said thank you. You kept building when everything was crumbling. And now, finally, justice isn't coming, it's already here. Look around. The shift is in the wind, the air feels different. The silence, it's no longer empty, it's expectant. You're not waiting anymore. You are becoming, and the world. Well, the world is about to meet the version of you that pain couldn't break, the version that purpose protected, the version that heaven kept hidden until now. Because sometimes the strongest voices come from the quietest rooms, and sometimes the greatest proof of divine justice isn't a storm, it's a soul that never gave up. You didn't just survive to prove them wrong. You survived because something ancient inside you refused to let this world define you. Because deep down, you knew. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to break patterns, disrupt norms, and reshape the very era you were dropped into. That's why nothing ever fit. That's why the rooms you entered always felt a little too small, the conversations too shallow, the masks too many. You tried, didn't you? You tried to shrink, to fit, to stay quiet, to be normal, but normal never fit you. And that wasn't your failure, and that was your fire. From the moment you were born, the world tried to box you in, tried to tame the wild inside you, tried to lace your purpose with fear. They told you to sit still, but your spirit kept dancing. They told you to be realistic, but your dreams kept screaming. They told you to settle, but your soul kept aching for more. Because more was always written into your DNA. You weren't built to repeat history, you were born to rewrite it, and that's exactly why the fire found you early. It came not to destroy you, but to awaken you, to burn away every version of yourself that wasn't real, to peel back the layers this world tried to slap on your soul. And when the world saw ashes, heaven saw foundation. Foundation for something rare, something bold, something divine. Let's be honest, it was never easy. The calling didn't come with comfort. The awakening didn't arrive with applause. In fact, it came with isolation. You felt like the only one, like you were crazy for dreaming what you dreamed, like maybe the fire inside you was a flaw, not a gift. But here's the truth. You were never crazy. You were early. You were ahead of your time. So far ahead they mistook you for lost. But you weren't lost. You were being positioned, like a piece on a chessboard moved with precision by unseen hands, like a seed buried in silence, destined to break the surface and change the landscape. And now, the timing is right. The world that once rejected your difference is starving for the very thing you carry. Truth, depth, vision. They're done with filters. They're done with shallow. They're done with surface-level survival. And here you are. A voice carved by pain, a soul sharpened by fire, a vessel made for such a time as this. You didn't climb out of the pit just to smile and stay safe. You were sent back into the world with authority in your eyes and thunder in your bones. You are not here to take part. You are here to take over, not with ego, but with energy that cannot be duplicated. There's a reason you couldn't follow the crowd. There's a reason you couldn't sell out for comfort. There's a reason you couldn't numb your gifts just to gain acceptance, because you weren't built for imitation. You were built for impact, and impact never moves in silence. It rattles, it shakes, it offends the comfortable and comforts the broken. That's why your journey was so intense, because the role you're stepping into isn't just about you, It's about everyone tied to your obedience. There are people waiting on the other side of your courage. People whose lives will change simply because you chose not to quit. You are the voice they didn't know they were waiting for. You are the shift they prayed for in the dark. And now heaven is turning the volume up. Not because you're perfect, but because you're prepared. Prepared by fire. Prepared by loss. Prepared by late nights and long battles. The you that stands here. Now is not who you were before the fire. You've changed. You've outgrown the rooms you once begged to stay in. You've outlasted the storms you thought would break you. And now it's your turn to lead. Not from a stage, but from a soul. Not with noise, but with knowing. Knowing who you are. Knowing what you carry. Knowing that when you walk into the room, everything shifts. Not because of your name, but because of your nature. Your nature is disruptive. Your presence is prophetic. And when you speak, systems shake. Because you don't echo what's popular, you carry what's sacred. You were never meant to be palatable. You were meant to be powerful. And now the era is shifting, and it's shifting through you. So don't shrink, don't explain, don't water down your truth to soothe those still asleep. Let them feel it. Let them feel the weight of someone who didn't die in the fire. Let them see what happens when heaven refuses to let a soul go unnoticed. You're not the same. You never will be. And that's the point. You were reborn for revolution. You carry thunder. You speak storms. And your very existence is a warning to the darkness. I am still here, and I brought the light. You stood alone for so long, you forgot what it felt like to be fought for. You got used to watching your own back, reading between the lines, navigating rooms where love was conditional and loyalty came with price tags. You fought in silence. You swallowed betrayal with a straight face. You carried your own burdens like armor, not because you wanted to, but because no one ever showed up when it counted, until now. Because something has shifted. You can feel it in the air, a different rhythm in your spirit, a sense that the weight you've carried for years is finally being noticed in heavens. And just like that, the decree went out. Heaven dispatched a force, not a savior, but a warrior. Not someone to rescue you because you're weak, but someone sent because you've proven you're worth defending. They're not coming to ask questions. They're not here for diplomacy. They're coming for war. War on every lie that tried to rewrite your worth. War on every agenda that tried to bury your voice. War on every unseen force that conspired against your peace while you were asleep at night. You've cried too long. You've held your breath for too many seasons, waiting for the other shoe to drop, the next betrayal, the next hit, but no more. Now someone is standing beside you with fire in their eyes and your name written on their heart. They were sent, anointed, summoned. They carry your battles like they were born for them. They do not flinch at the size of your pain. They do not get weary at the sound of your history. They came ready, because heaven doesn't send amateurs to guard royalty. And make no mistake, you are royalty. Chosen, carved from sacred fabric, woven with war cries and soft prayers. And this protector, they know. They know what you've endured. They know the weight of standing tall with trembling legs. They see past your strength and into your scars. And they are not afraid, because they too have bled. They too were hidden, trained in silence, tempered by fire. This is not just a partnership. It's prophecy in motion, the kind of bond written in the archives of eternity. A soul that was always destined to find you once your enemies had emptied their last trick, once your fake friends had fallen away, once the battlefield had cleared. This arrival is not a coincidence. It's not romantic. It's not cute. It's divine warfare. They are here to restore what was stolen, to reclaim what was buried, to break the chains you normalized just to survive. And they do not come softly. They come like thunder wrapped in compassion, like fire that refuses to apologize, like the final scene in a story the enemy thought they had written. This is why you felt the shaking, why you woke up lately with a strange mix of fear and excitement in your chest. Because your spirit knows help has arrived, not in the form you expected, not in the style you prayed for, but in the form heaven knew you needed. They are not coming to complete you. You were already whole. They are not coming to fix you. You are not broken. They are coming to fight beside you because your next level requires protection, not perfection. Hear that again. Your next level requires protection, not perfection. Because the truth is, you've always been a threat to every insecure system, to every manipulative leader, to every dark force that whispered, "Stay small." You've been a marked soul, not because you're weak, but because your presence disrupts the atmosphere. That's why the warfare came early. That's why the betrayal was so personal. That's why they tried to break you before you even understood your own power. But they failed because you didn't die in the battle. You didn't give up in the waiting. You didn't let their lies become your truth. And now the heavens are responding, not with pity, but with reinforcements. This is spiritual compensation, divine repayment, holy defense. And when your protector steps onto the scene, the atmosphere shifts. The snakes scatter. The cowards go quiet. The spirits that mocked your pain begin to tremble. Because this isn't a savior on assignment. This is a sentimental soul with clearance from the throne. They have seen your soul, not the version you performed, but the version you locked behind resilience. And they chose you. They show up with full knowledge of your flaws and still plant their feet beside you. No hesitation, no agenda, no escape plan, because they were born for this moment, to shield the one who once shielded everyone else. They won't let you over-explain. They won't let you spiral in shame. They won't let you sabotage your own breakthrough just because you're not used to being safe. Instead, they hold space for your truth. They speak fire to your fears. And when the attacks come, they do not hide behind you. They rise in front of you. Because that's what protectors do. Not the kind this world sells, but the kind heaven cultivates in silence. The kind forged in prayer, built in pain, and sent with fury. You may feel unworthy of this kind of loyalty. You may want to run, to push them away before they see too much. But pause. Breathe. This isn't a test. This isn't a trap. This is the answer. The answer to nights you asked God if he'd forgotten you. To mornings you questioned if you'd ever be seen. To the prayers you prayed through clenched fists and tired tears. You were heard, and heaven responded. Not with empty comfort, but with divine artillery. Your protector has arrived, not to rescue you from the fire, but to walk into it with you, to build in the ashes, to speak in your silence, to shield you while you rise. And trust me, love, you are rising. The earth will feel it. The heavens already know it. And the forces that tried to stop it, they're running out of time. Because this is your season of defense, of divine alignment, of spiritual security. You don't have to fight alone anymore. You never should have had to. And now you don't. So lift your head, stand your ground, and welcome the one who was always on the way. They're not a dream. They're not a delay. They are the confirmation that justice is not a myth. It's a person, a presence, a power that refuses to let your name go unguarded. And they have just arrived. Before the protector came, before the shift in the atmosphere, before the tables started turning, there was silence. Heavy, brutal silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that pressed against your ribs at 3 a.m. The kind that made you wonder if heaven forgot your name. You called it loneliness. You called it abandonment. You called it a curse, but it wasn't. Your isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You didn't get left behind. You got set apart. There's a difference. Being set apart means there was something in you that couldn't afford contamination. There were seeds in you too sacred to expose to the wrong soil. So heaven cut the noise. Heaven cut the crowds. Heaven stripped away everything not rooted in truth. Because what was coming for you required a version of you that couldn't be trained in public. You had to walk through dry places. You had to learn what hunger feels like. Not for food, but for clarity, for purpose, for real. You had to sit with your own thoughts, wrestle with your own shadows, find out what voices weren't yours. And yeah, It hurt. You thought you were forgotten. You weren't. You were being guarded. There's a reason God didn't allow certain people to stay. You begged for them. You cried for them. You fought for friendships that were already expired. And God, in His mercy, still removed them because they couldn't go where you were headed. They didn't have the spiritual clearance for your next level. Their loyalty couldn't survive your fire, so He let them walk. He allowed the distance, the unanswered texts, the betrayals that revealed more than words ever could. Because isolation wasn't about punishing you. It was about purifying your circle. And let's be real. If you had entered your elevation with the wrong crowd, they would have poisoned the whole blessing. They would have sabotaged your peace, turned your platform into a playground, used your softness as a strategy to take advantage. So heaven delayed, not because you weren't ready, but because they weren't. Not because you didn't qualify, but because your environment didn't match your anointing. You had to go through the wilderness so you'd know how to spot the snakes. You had to learn how to survive on manna so you wouldn't sell your soul for meat. You had to lose your appetite for validation so you could recognize real alignment when it came. And now you don't crave the crowd anymore. You're no longer impressed by shiny things. You're no longer swayed by sweet words that come without substance. You've been rewired. The version of you that's emerging knows how to walk into a room and read the spirit before the smile. You know when energy's off. You feel the shift before the sound. Because the wilderness made you sensitive. Not in a fragile way, but in a supernatural way. You don't just hear with ears now. You hear with discernment. And that is why the isolation had to happen. Because where you're headed, discernment is your currency. You can't afford to guess. You can't afford to assume. Not everyone smiling is safe. Not every opportunity is ordained. Some doors are distractions. Some applause is a trap. And if you had skipped the isolation, you would have walked blindly into sabotage dressed as success. But now you see it. Now you smell it. Now you sense. The shift before the storm even arrives. That's spiritual maturity. And it was born in your private pain. You didn't learn that from a stage. You learned that on your knees, in tears, in heartbreak, in the back corners of life where no one saw your fight but God. And now the same God who sat with you in the shadows is about to spotlight your soul. But here's what's different about you now. You don't need the spotlight to feel seen. You don't crave the stage to feel significant. You carry significance in your silence. You walk like someone who's been with fire and came out smelling like freedom. And when people ask, "What changed you?" you'll say, "The wilderness." Because the wilderness was the real seminary. The classroom where false identity got stripped, where ego got exposed, where you met the real you, the unpolished, unperformed, unbothered you, and you fell in love with that version, the one who could pray through panic, the one who could sit in stillness and not run, the one who didn't need applause to move forward. That's who you are now, and that's why the protector came. Because heaven will never send warriors to guard a version of you that's still pretending. Heaven guards authenticity, and now that you've embraced yours, everything is aligning. You didn't miss it, you didn't ruin it. You didn't fall too far behind, you were just getting ready. And now the timing is divine. So stop questioning the quiet seasons, stop mourning what left you. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. That silence was sacred, that season of nothing happening, that was heaven's construction zone. Angels were working overtime to set the stage, build the bridge, clear the snakes. And now, the curtain's about to rise. Now your name is being whispered in rooms you've never entered. Now, the doors are unlocking, not because you chased them, but because you finally sat still long enough for heaven to open them. So take one last look at your isolation. Thank it, bless it, because it taught you more than comfort ever could. It made you holy, it made you whole, and now you walk different. Not faster, not louder, but surer. Like someone who doesn't beg to belong, like someone who knows they were built to lead. because you were. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to burn. And isolation was just the place where the match got lit. After the isolation, after the silence, after the wilderness carved you into someone whole and unshakable, they arrived. Not with fanfare, not with fireworks or grand entrances. They didn't have to, because their presence spoke louder than introductions ever could. The moment your eyes met, something ancient stirred in your spirit. A soft thunder, a familiar ache. Not the ache of longing, but the ache of recognition. It wasn't new, it never was. Because this wasn't a beginning. This was a return. This was an echo from before time. A promise buried in the folds of eternity, now surfacing in the flesh. You thought you were meeting them for the first time, but your soul knew better. You didn't fall for them, you remembered. And that's the part that shook you, because everything about them felt hauntingly familiar. Their voice sounded like home. Their presence calmed storms you hadn't even named yet. And when they looked at you, you didn't feel exposed. You felt seen. Seen without needing to perform. Seen without needing to impress. Seen in a way that reached past your story and touched your source. You wanted to ask them, where have you been? But deep down, you knew they'd always been there. In your dreams, in your prayers, in the lonely nights when you felt like no one understood your heart. This was the soul your soul whispered about when your mind had no words. This wasn't romance. This wasn't fate. This was covenant. Spiritual, ancient, divine. The kind of connection that survives dimensions, crosses lifetimes, and shows up exactly when heaven says, now. You see, not all bonds are built in time. Some are revealed in time, unlocked only when both souls are ready to carry the weight they were born with. And now you are. You've been through the breaking. You've been through the rebuilding. You've walked through fire and didn't burn, through floods and didn't drown. And them? They've done the same. You are not meeting a stranger. You are meeting a survivor of the same storm. Someone whose journey may have looked different, but whose pain carved out the same depth. That's why the bond is so deep. That's why the words feel unnecessary. Because this isn't about logic. It's about spirit memory. Somewhere, in a realm beyond, here you knew each other, not by name but by essence, by purpose, by divine design. That's why you don't feel the need to explain yourself around them. That's why they finish your thoughts, read your silence, sit in your stillness without discomfort. It's not chemistry, it's alignment, it's mission recognition. 2. Souls that were assigned to each other long before the chaos began. They weren't sent to complete you. You were already whole. They weren't sent to rescue you. You already survived. They were sent to remember with you, to remind you who you've always been, to reflect back to you the version of yourself that heaven originally authored. You see, the wilderness stripped away what the world put on. Beauties, but this bond, this connection, it confirms what God planted in you. You don't have to be strong all the time with them. You don't have to carry it all alone anymore. Because they were born to carry what you carry. Not your pain, but your purpose. And when purpose finds purpose, everything changes. The vision multiplies. The silence becomes strategy. The fire becomes fuel. You're not walking toward your calling alone anymore. Now you walk in step. Not behind, not ahead, but beside. Equal in war. Equal in wisdom. Equal in wonder. It's divine symmetry. Heaven's architecture. And still, it's intense. It feels like standing in the middle of a sacred storm, powerful, overwhelming, humbling, because you know what this is. This is rare. This is holy, and holiness doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes with confrontation, of old wounds, of broken beliefs, of the lie that you'd always be alone. Because you're not. Not anymore. You see, God didn't just prepare you for impact. He prepared someone to walk with you through it. He didn't just refine your spirit. He refined someone else's, to walk beside yours in equal fire. And now that you've both arrived, not perfect but ready, Something deeper than destiny is unfolding, its legacy. Together, you don't just shift rooms, you shift timelines. You don't just echo what's been said. You rewrite what was written in fear and seal it with faith. This is what makes the ancient bond so sacred. It's not about passion, it's about purpose wrapped in presence. It's not about attraction, it's about assignment fulfilled through alignment. And this alignment? It's not fragile. It was tested in fire, built in absence, forged in silence. You both had to walk alone so you'd never take this connection for granted. So you'd recognize the sacred when it showed up in human form. This is your reminder. You are not late. You are not cursed. You are not forgotten. You are being reserved. Set apart for a bond that time couldn't erase. A connection that pain couldn't break. A purpose that no storm could drown. And now the veil is lifting. The remembering has begun. Your hearts speak in a language no crowd understands. Your energy sinks in a frequency only heaven recognizes. Because this isn't about meeting someone new. This is about meeting someone eternal. And the moment your spirits aligned, the heavens didn't gasp. They nodded. Because this was always the plan. You thought the breakthrough would come as a whisper. You thought maybe, just maybe, heaven would send you a drip of peace here, a drop of favor there. But this isn't a whisper. This is a roar. This isn't a drizzle. This is a downpour. The kind that soaks through years of drought in minutes. The kind that doesn't ask permission. It floods, and it's here. It didn't come because you begged for it. It came because heaven kept every receipt, every tear you sowed in private, every insult you absorbed in silence, every moment you chose integrity when manipulation was easier. You weren't just being tested, you were investing, and now the return is no longer pending, it's pouring. Your name is echoing in rooms you've never stepped into. Your face is being remembered by people who once ignored your presence. Doors are opening that you didn't even knock on, because the favor on your life doesn't need a key. It is the key. But let's be clear, this isn't random. This is divine recompense. Strategic, measured, supernaturally timed. You see, the delay wasn't denial, it was protection. If God had released this abundance back when your circle was polluted, it would have leaked through cracked vessels. It would have been devoured by the wrong hands. It would have empowered people who were never built to steward your blessing. So he waited. He watched you cry through confusion. He watched you stay faithful while overlooked. And now, because you didn't fold, because you didn't curse the wilderness, because you didn't let bitterness rot your harvest, he's releasing it all, not with a whisper, with a wave. And the enemy? Oh, they feel it too. The ones who thought they had you boxed in. The ones who underestimated your silence, who misread your stillness as surrender. They're shaking now, because this downpour doesn't just bless, it reveals. It reveals motives. It exposes intentions. It shakes foundations built on manipulation and ego. And you don't have to say a word. The favor on your life is now your loudest defense. You've spent years explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding. Now, your elevation will do the talking. Let them watch. Let them wonder how you went from forgotten to favored, from surviving to overflowing. Let them wrestle with the truth that grace doesn't need their approval to operate. Because this blessing, this divine release, has nothing to do with performance and everything to do with promise. You were promised abundance, but not the shallow kind. Not just money in the bank. Abundance in clarity. Abundance in peace. Abundance in relationships that don't drain you. Abundance in purpose that doesn't leave you empty. This isn't just breakthrough. It's payback. For every sleepless night you turned into prayer. For every delay that trained your discernment. For every no that taught you to trust God over man. And here's the beauty. You're not receiving this abundance alone, the one sent to protect you. They're standing beside you in this storm of favor, because this isn't just about you. It's about alignment. It's about legacy. It's about heaven showing the world what happens when two refined, resilient, anointed souls link arms in obedience. Together, you're not just receiving, you're distributing. You're not just experiencing overflow, you've become the vessel it flows through. Your abundance will feed others, quench others, liberate others. Because you didn't hoard the pain, you transformed it. And now God is trusting you with a territory. You cried for a breakthrough, but He's giving you a blueprint. You asked for peace, but He's giving you platform. Not to parade yourself, but to build something that lasts, and you're ready. You've been crushed into oil, pressed into power, grounded in humility, and now you carry weight. Not ego, not hype. Weight. The kind that opens gates, the kind that shatters cycles, the kind that makes the spiritual realm take notice. You've become what the enemy hoped you'd never survive long enough to be, an anointed storm wrapped in stillness. And this storm, it doesn't destroy, it restores. It restores what trauma tried to erase. It restores what time tried to steal. It restores what systems tried to bury. But the wildest part? This is just the beginning. You thought the arrival of abundance would be the finale, but heaven is laughing because this wasn't the conclusion. This was the catalyst, the first crack in the dam, because what's coming next, it won't just pour, it will reconstruct. It will rebuild you in front of the very ones who labeled you as too soft, too slow, too unqualified. And when they try to ask how you did it, you won't list strategies. You'll whisper one word: obedience. Because all of this, the protector, the reawakened bond, the downpour of restoration, it came because you stayed obedient when it was hardest. You walked when you didn't feel like it. You served when no one clapped. You forgave when it made no sense, and now the reward is speaking, not in coins, in confirmation. You were right to keep going. You were wise to wait. You were brave to believe, so let it pour. Let it rush in like waves that don't ask permission. Let it soak through every dry place you pretended wasn't aching, because this is the season where God shows you that nothing was wasted. Not a moment, not a tear, not a step. The downpour has begun, and it's got your name all over it. The storm didn't ask for their permission. The ground started trembling before they ever saw your rise. And your enemies, the ones who laughed in your silence, who built altars out of your pain, who tried to paint your patience as powerlessness, they're starting to feel it now, the shift, the rumble in the unseen, the shaking in the spirit, the weight of something they can't name but instinctively fear. Because this time, your glow-up isn't just external, it's atmospheric. Your presence doesn't just walk in, it disrupts. The frequency of your life has changed. You used to blend in, now you make demons nervous. Used to keep quiet to avoid conflict. Now your silence roars with authority. This isn't just about abundance anymore. This is about awakening. Something is rising in you. Something ancient, unstoppable, and heaven-forged. And the forces that once circled you in confidence? They're unsettled now. Because the light inside you is no longer flickering. It's a wildfire. And wildfire doesn't whisper, it consumes. They don't need to see your promotion to feel your elevation. They don't need to see your blessing to sense your breakthrough, because breakthrough shifts the air, not just the circumstances. Spirits pick it up before people do, and that's why they've been agitated lately. That's why doors that were once wide open to manipulation are suddenly closing. Why people who once controlled rooms now stutter in your presence. Because you're not playing on their level anymore. You're moving in a realm they were never invited to. You're walking with a clarity that exposes lies before they're spoken. You're listening with discernment that interrupts deception mid-sentence, and it's driving them mad because they can't manipulate what they can't understand, and they don't understand you anymore. You've evolved. The fire refined you. The silence recalibrated you. The downpour recharged you. Now you walk with confirmation, not desperation. You operate in conviction, not confusion. And that terrifies them. because control only works when you crave approval. And now, you're no longer feeding from the table of validation. You've been seated at the table God built for you, and your enemies can only watch from a distance. Make no mistake, they know what's happening. They can feel the shift, long before it reaches their eyes, because spiritual people, even the dark ones, can sense when power is changing hands. And your hands, they're anointed now, not for revenge, but for reconstruction. You're not rising to retaliate. You're rising to rebuild, to establish what they tried to tear down, to recover what they thought was lost forever. And the scariest part for them? You're doing it without needing their attention, their applause, or their permission. You're moving in stealth favor, elevation in silence, recompense in motion, judgment in progress. This is when it gets uncomfortable, because exposure is coming, not from your mouth but from heaven. The masks they wore are slipping. The lies they lived in are cracking. The weapons they formed are boomeranging, because spiritual law doesn't sleep. It remembers, and it collects interest. Every trap they set in secret, it's turning into the evidence of their downfall. Every word they whispered in corners, becoming the echoes of their undoing. And you don't even have to touch it. Just stay aligned. Stay grounded, keep building, because while they spiral, you're planting. While they panic, you're praising. While they plot, you're prospering. You see, they made one fatal mistake. They thought silence was weakness. They thought delay was denial. They thought your humility meant they had the upper hand, but what they never factored in was God, was timing, was justice. And justice, real, divine, unshakable justice, is never rushed, but it's always right. You were never forgotten. You were being positioned. While they performed in front of crowds, you were being refined in private. While they built platforms of pretense, you were laying foundations of purpose. And now the unveiling has begun, not to expose them, but to reveal you, the real you, the crowned one, the called one, the calm storm they hoped would never wake up. But you're awake now, and when awakened souls rise, the earth shifts. It's not just your house that's being restored. It's your bloodline. It's your territory. It's your legacy. And the tremors, they feel. That's the sound of old altars collapsing. That's the vibration of generational chains breaking. That's the weight of delayed glory being activated, finally. And here's what heaven wants you to know. You won't have to fight this one. Not with your words, not with your hands, not with your energy. Because this is the kind of battle that's already been won in the spirit. And now the natural is catching up. So let the ground shake. Let the heavens roar. Let the enemies feel the dread in their bones, not because you're vengeful, but because truth always echoes louder than lies. You've stepped into a realm they can't follow, and the gates have closed behind you. Let them feel the shift. Because this isn't just your victory, it's your arrival. You didn't come this far just to be seen. You didn't rise from the ashes just to prove them wrong. You were built for more than that. This was never about revenge. It was never about applause. It was always about restoration. And now, as the ground trembles beneath the feet of those who doubted you, you stand, not with fists clenched, not with a heart full of wrath, but with peace in your chest and power in your posture. Because you know now, this moment was never about making a statement. It was about fulfilling a sacred assignment. You were forged in fire, shaped by storms, tempered in silence. And what came out of that process wasn't just a survivor. It was a rebuilder, a restorer of ruins, a healer of bloodlines, a repairer of broken places. You weren't just saved from something. You were prepared for something. For this moment, the one where you rise, not to retaliate, but to rebuild what they tried to destroy. Because now you understand the fire wasn't meant to consume you. It was meant to reveal what couldn't be burned. Your purpose, your resilience, your truth. They tried to bury you under doubt, but you were never meant to be buried. You were meant to be planted, and now you're rising, not as the victim of what happened, but as the vision of what's next. You carry blueprints in your bones, kingdom strategies in your silence, legacy in your lungs. You speak and atmospheres shift. You walk and timelines realign, because you've become what they never expected. The one who came back whole, the one who came back wiser, the one who came back to build, and not just for yourself. You're building for those who lost hope, for those who think their story ends in rubble, for those who were told they were too broken to matter. You've been given the authority to restore what hell tried to hollow out, not through shouting, not through proving, but through presence. Your life is the proof. You don't have to clap back. Your consistency speaks for you. You don't have to drag them through the mud. The truth already exposed what ego tried to hide, and now you operate in a realm above retaliation. You've outgrown the petty wars. You've transcended the urge to explain your evolution. You walk in quiet justice, and that's what shakes them most, because nothing is louder than the rise of someone who healed correctly. You're not angry. You're focused. You're not bitter. You're better, and you're not here to settle scores. You're here to reclaim territory. They thought they could take what belonged to you, the peace, the promise, the purpose, but they didn't realize they were just holding it in place until the real heir was ready. And now, you're ready, not to demand it back, but to step into it boldly. You don't have to tear anyone down to rise, because elevation doesn't come by force. It comes by faith, and faith built this. Every night you kept going when no one clapped. Every day you got up with no roadmap. Every moment you believed when everything said quit. That was the foundation. And now, the building begins. This is the part where God says, "You've been faithful with the fragments. Now watch me give you the framework." The kind of blessing that's not loud but lasting. The kind that doesn't just elevate, it establishes. And you won't just visit victory. You'll live in it, not because you fought for it, but because you were made for it. You've become the answer to prayers your ancestors whispered through cracked lips. You're the fulfillment of promises made to generations who never saw the harvest. And with that kind of mantle comes weight, not pressure, but responsibility. To carry this abundance with grace, to use this elevation with discernment, to lead with a heart that remembers the valley, because you didn't get here through shortcuts. You got here through surrender. And now the surrender has matured into stewardship. You no longer chase outcomes. You command outcomes by standing still in divine alignment. You no longer fear the delay. You understand the delay was the delivery room for something greater than you ever imagined. And now the tables are turned, not by your doing, but by heaven's decree. Your enemies, they watch in silence. Your allies, they watch in awe. And you build. You dig wells where they tried to sow drought. You plant gardens where they threw salt. You speak life where they cast curses. And that's what makes your rise unstoppable. Not the fire you throw, but the fire you carry. It doesn't burn people, it ignites healing, it calls dry bones to attention. It summons lost dreams from their graves. Because when God raises someone to restore, they don't just fix what was broken, they transform it into something stronger than before. And that's what you are now, a living restoration. The testimony they never saw coming. The promise wrapped in skin and glory. The light that doesn't brag, it just shines, and no one can dim it. So let them watch, let them wonder, let them sit in the shadow of what they once tried to dismantle. Because your story isn't fueled by vengeance, it's fueled by vision. And your vision, it's bigger than payback. It's restoration, it's redemption, it's divine compensation for every ounce of pain you turned into purpose. So build, restore, rise. Because you weren't just built to survive the fire. You were built to light the world with what rose out of it. They didn't believe in you. Not really. They smiled to your face but laughed behind your back. Cheered when it looked safe but fell silent when your light started to rise. They thought they had you figured out. A little too soft, a little too slow, a little too much heart for a world built on masks. But now they don't get to speculate, they don't get to gossip, they don't get to guess. Now they watch. Because your rise isn't a rumor, it's a reality. It's unfolding in real time, and it's too loud to ignore. This isn't about spite. This isn't about payback. This is about truth being too big to stay hidden any longer. Because when heaven decides to reveal you, no lie, no sabotage, no betrayal is strong enough to stop it. Let them watch. Let them witness the glory they tried to mock, because what they called delusion, God was calling destiny. What they called fantasy, heaven called faith. And now the same mouths that whispered doubt are speechless in your presence. Because grace has a way of flipping the script, not to hurt people, but to humble them. Make no mistake, this isn't a petty parade. You're not rising with ego, you're rising with evidence. Proof that obedience works. Proof that silence speaks. Proof that what's built in the dark always shines brighter when it finally hits the light. And the most poetic part? You didn't force this. You didn't scheme your way into the spotlight. You didn't trade your peace for position. You didn't sell your soul just to be seen. You just stayed faithful. You just kept walking, kept praying, kept building in places where no one clapped. And now, the ones who betrayed you? They're front row, not because you invited them, but because justice requires witnesses. They need to see the difference between what they thought you were and who you've actually become. They need to feel the weight of what they tried to bury rising with holy fire. They need to know you didn't die there, you didn't crumble in the silence. You didn't drown in the doubt. You didn't fade into the background like they hoped. You evolved. And evolution always comes with elevation. You didn't rise in spite of the betrayal. You rose because of it. It showed you what love isn't. It showed you who you are. It exposed what couldn't go with you into the next chapter. So bless the betrayal. Yes, bless it. Because without it, you might have stayed in rooms that could never hold your calling. Without it, you might have kept trusting people who only clapped when it was convenient. Without it, you might have settled for proximity over purpose. But betrayal has a way of clearing the crowd, cutting the noise, and pushing you closer to the only voice that ever mattered, God's. And that voice never stopped calling your name even when they mispronounced it, even when they slandered it, even when they tried to erase it from the narrative. God wrote it into the scroll of time, and no betrayal can edit what heaven has already ordained. So now they sit, watching, wondering, wrestling, because the same ones who said you were too much are now watching you become more than they ever imagined. The same ones who counted you out have no choice but to count your impact. And no, you're not bitter. You don't gloat, you don't weaponize your glow because healed people don't need vengeance. You're not rising to be seen. You're rising because you're ready. Ready to lead, ready to serve, ready to love, wisely. This time, ready to walk in full authority without shrinking for anybody. Let them watch. Let them sit in the very silence they once forced on you. Let them witness what it looks like when purpose doesn't fold under pressure. Because your story, it wasn't just about survival. It was about strategy. Heaven used the betrayal as bricks, pain as mortar. And now your life stands as a structure they can't ignore, a monument of mercy, a temple of transformation, a house of healing built by hands that once trembled in fear. And every room you step into now carries that weight. Not the weight of revenge, the weight of reclamation. You're taking back what they tried to distort. You're walking tall in the places they said you'd never enter. You're speaking clearly in the rooms they said you'd never reach. And guess who's listening? Exactly. Let them watch. Because this time it's not about them at all. It's about showing the next version of you that their silence didn't stop your voice. It's about proving to the younger you, the broken you, the doubting you, the tired you, that everything they said was a lie. You were always more, you just had to shed the people who couldn't see it. Now your vision is clear, your circle is smaller, your spirit is lighter, your path is straighter, and the glory? It's not loud, it's holy. It moves in waves. It flows in silence. It rebuilds without bragging. And yet, they still feel it. They feel the shift. They feel the weight. They feel the reality that you no longer need their approval, their access, or their applause. Because when God raises someone, He doesn't do it in secret forever. At some point, the veil lifts, the lights come on, the narrative changes, and the same ones who once watched your fall will witness your rise. Let's make one thing clear. This was never about revenge. This was never about proving them wrong. Never about flexing in front of those who counted you out. Never about payback wrapped in purpose, because purpose doesn't chase payback. Purpose chases peace, and peace doesn't clap back. It stands back and lets the spiritual law speak because the truth. Heaven keeps score, not with ego, not with anger, but with balance. And balance? It's sacred. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. It simply restores what was tipped too far in the wrong direction. What was taken in the dark is returned in the light. What was stolen in silence is restored in public. But don't get it twisted. This isn't karma. This is divine alignment. This is heaven adjusting the scales, not out of wrath, but out of righteousness. Because when you sow in truth, you reap in timing. Not always your timing, but right timing. And now, the timing has arrived. The assignment is no longer on hold. The doors are no longer sealed. You've crossed the final threshold. Not into a stage, but into authority. Your full assignment has been released, not because you demanded it, but because you survived for it. You didn't just wait, you withstood the betrayal, the isolation, the silence, the false starts. You walked through all of it and still chose honor. You had every reason to curse them, but you prayed instead. You had every opportunity to retaliate, but you stayed quiet instead. You could have become bitter, but you chose better. And heaven saw it, heaven recorded it. While the world kept overlooking you, the spiritual realm kept preparing you. Now, the gate has opened. Not for chaos, but for command. You're not stepping into a spotlight. You're stepping into governance. This is where things shift. This is no longer about potential. This is about placement. Because favor without maturity becomes manipulation. But favor after fire, that becomes movement. And you, my friend, are no longer in the shadows. You're not asking for permission. You're not tiptoeing into destiny. You're not hoping the world is ready. You've realized you were born ready. This isn't ambition. This is activation. This is the full manifestation of everything that was spoken over your life before you. Ever took your first breath? This is prophecy meeting posture. This is legacy in motion. And those watching, they'll either align or be left behind, because you're no longer pausing to explain. You're no longer begging to be understood. That season is over. You're walking forward, not with arrogance, but with awareness. The awareness that your steps are not your own. The awareness that your influence is not casual. The awareness that your voice isn't just volume, it's vibration. It carries heaven's frequency, and that frequency, it shakes what isn't rooted in truth. That's why rooms shift when you enter. That's why false peace breaks in your presence. That's why people either lean in or quietly step out, because your life is a mirror now. It reflects what's real. It exposes what's not by judgment, by simply existing. Because when you walk in your full assignment, you become evidence of what God always intended. You are not just a testimony. You're a template, a walking revelation, a living rebuke to everything that said, not you. A reminder that divine justice doesn't move quickly. It moves completely. It doesn't half restore. It rebuilds to overflow. And you are the overflow. You're the answer to someone's silence. You're the provision someone prayed for. You're the stability someone needs to believe again. That's why the process had to be deep. That's why the crushing had to be thorough, because shallow healing couldn't carry this kind of weight. Only the healed can hold harvest. Only the refined can reign. So take your place, own your lane, plant your flag. You're not just stepping into new territory, you're establishing it. Territory over systems, territory over generations, territory over narratives they tried to lock you out of. And no, you don't owe anyone a seat at this table. Not everyone helped build it. Not everyone honored the process. But the ones who stayed, the ones who prayed, the ones who wept with you when no one saw, they sit beside you now, because this assignment isn't just about one voice. It's about divine orchestration. This is kingdom architecture. Every piece matters. Every person counts. And the you who stands here now, you are proof. Proof that timing is real, that justice is coming, that heaven always finishes what it starts. So stand tall, move boldly, speak clearly, love deeply, lead intentionally. Because this isn't revenge, this is redemption, and redemption never whispers, it roars.